Hello, and welcome to another edition of Education Matters. I'm Patricia O'Neill, President of the Montgomery County Board of Education. Today, we will be talking about the important role of the student member of the Board of Education. Joining me today is our outgoing 2014-15 student member of the board, Dahlia Huh, and our incoming student member of the board for 2015-16, Eric Guerci. Welcome, and thank you for joining me. Dahlia, let's start by talking about what the role of the student member of the board is.
Right, so the Board of Education is made up of 7 adults and 1 student, and that student member of the board is really there to make sure that what's on the student's mind is heard at the board table. And just like how the adult board members bring their own unique background experience, whether they're in PTA, whether they were lawyers, or their past principals, the student board member brings their experience to the board, and it can be very helpful in some of the decision-making processes.
So Eric, you recently were elected student board member and sworn in on July 1st. Tell me about how did that happen? What did you have to go through to become the new SMOB?
Well, the SMOB election process actually begins in January of every year, where there's a filing deadline in late January, and then there's a convention shortly after of delegates from various schools, middle schools and high schools across our county. And so what I did was I went out and talked to the various student government groups through roundtable discussions to sort of hear what mattered to them. And then after the convention, I was fortunate enough to make it through, and then there was a general election process in which we filmed a debate which over 80,000 students watched. And then I went to various schools to talk to students during their lunch hours, hand out campaign literature, and talk to them sort of about what was on their mind and what my ideas were and what I would bring to the table. And then the general election process happened in late April, where about 80,000 students were eligible to vote. So
it's all of our middle school and high school students?
All of our middle school and high school students. So there's a very broad voting population.
Wow. And Dahlia, let's talk about this past year. What do you reflect on as some of the highlights?
Well, I would say this past year has been very packed with a lot of important decisions. And if we go way back to the fall, we had the calendar discussion, and then in the winter we had the whole bell times discussion. And I think one of the most memorable moments was raising my hand to vote for that bell times decision, just because I was previously on the bell times work group 2 years ago. So this is an issue that I was very familiar with, and I've been able to see the whole process from start to end. And I think, of course, there's also the superintendent search as well. So this year has been kind of packed with a lot of important decisions.
And you were very active in advocating in Annapolis for expanded SMOB voting rights.
Yes.
What is the SMOB currently able to vote on?
So the student member of the board is able to vote on most everything, and this includes bell times decisions, or let's say the calendar, but we're currently not able to vote on collective bargaining, capital operating budget, and a couple other things. Boundary changes is another one of them. And I really feel that the SMOB should have an equal vote on the board, and it would actually benefit the whole county if we were able to have these full voting rights. So in Annapolis, this legislative session, we traveled a couple times, me and Eric as well, trying to lobby for this bill, and it fell a little bit short, but we're hoping to get it in the coming years.
So Eric, what do you foresee as some upcoming topics that are of particular interest to you?
Yeah, so obviously this is going to be a very busy year for our Board of Education and for the students in particular. We're in the midst of a high-stakes search for our next superintendent, and I hope to bring the student input into that whole process to sort of see what desired characteristics the students have. And other notable things that we're working on include assessment policy, which is very near and dear to the students' hearts, the final and semester exams that they have to go through 2 weeks every semester, just to name a few. And we're continuing to combat enrollment issues, where we're surging through the roof with our enrollment, about 3,000 students a year. And so students are facing overcapacity in their schools, and they're feeling like class sizes continue to increase. And we're also continuing to work to push for solutions to close the achievement gap and various other gaps that exist in our school system. So we're working very closely on that.
So both of you have been involved with MCR, I mean, before you became SMOB, and and you as well. Let's talk about how we currently engage students and how that role is changing, how we can better engage students. I know each SMOB has brought their own style to the job, but let's talk about some of those activities.
Right, so I think it's really important that students have the opportunity to get involved and taking that first step, showing leadership if you have an interest in it. So this year, my SMOB Advisory Council, we had many applicants across the county, but I chose to make it as big as possible. So we had 55 students, elementary, middle, and high school, from around 20 different schools in our county. And it was very informative just seeing and hearing what students felt about different Board of Education matters. But you know, I definitely see room for improvement in making sure that students felt like they're heard and are able to get to these meetings or are able to just get their feedback back to the Board of Education through social media or whatever tools there may be.
Yeah, so we obviously live in an ever-changing world of technology. So the SMOB is continuing to engage students via online methods, via virtual methods. So something that I'm setting up this year is called smoberic.com, which sort of tells students a little bit about me and sort of helps engage students in the budgetary and legislative processes that the boards go through in hopefully in an engaging way. And I know that something that Dahlia did was hold student town halls with the superintendent. So she would go out to the schools and talk with students in the media center or in the cafeteria via an MCPS TV network. So it was live streamed throughout the whole school, and it was a great way for students to be able to express their concerns to the superintendent and to the board. So that's definitely an initiative that I want to continue because I'm a strong advocate for face-to-face communication, because that's obviously the best way, the #1 way to hear what students have to say and to sort of feel how they feel about an issue. So
let's talk about how do you balance being a student and being a student member of the Board of Education, because you're doing homework and you're both, you know, had heavy class loads. You're a junior. You're going to be very busy. But I mean, I've found over my years that the SMOBs have always come very well prepared. They're used to doing homework, and so they come to the board meetings prepared. But how do you juggle the pressures of class work, class time, and the obligations of being a Board of Education member who has a vote on important matters like bell times, the calendar, et cetera?
Right, so I think it's something that our teachers instill in us as students very early on in our educational career. They tell us to prioritize and really find what is most important to you and making sure that gets done first. So, you know, it's definitely been a balancing act, but I think after the first couple of weeks, I was able to find that balance between schoolwork and then Board of Education work. And of course, being a board member is an enormous responsibility, and I don't take that lightly. Eric will not be taking that lightly. And it's really just finding that balance, but I think realizing that you made a commitment to being a board member and you made a commitment to the 155,000 students, that's really where my priorities lied this year. And it was just been an incredible experience.
And
yeah.
How do you think you'll be able to balance? What tips have you gotten from other student members of the board?
Well, Dahlia sort of talked to me about the different processes where we get memos on our online service called Board Docs, and we get a package sent home to us every week in the Pony, and sort of making sure that you are prepared for the meetings so that the other board members are treating you like an equal on the board by making sure that you're prepared and that you come into the meetings ready to project the student voice, ready to show students that you are doing your homework and that you're prepared to project their voice, and sort of being entrusted with the seat is such an honor, and that's something that I'm definitely going to prioritize by making sure that I'm doing the best that I can, giving it my all, and helping students fulfill their potential.
So let's talk about some issues that you see that we need, some paths we need to go down exploring and working on in the future.
So I think with our Chromebook rollout this year and just kind of exploring what we can do with technology, that's definitely something to explore. Maybe not next year, but in the years afterwards when maybe the budget isn't so tight. But I think that's one area where education can continue to expand and we can continue to engage students. And you know, the education world is always changing, new curriculum is coming in, and we need to make sure that students are prepared not only for the next grade level, but for career and their life after MCPS. And I think that's really important, and we need to keep that in mind whenever we make decisions at the board office or at the central office level.
So Eric, are there some areas, you touched on the role about assessments and final exams as an issue that is important to students. Are there other issues that you'd like to see us spend more time on this year?
Yeah, I think that assessments and workload are two issues which are very close to students because they feel that every day, every night. I think that we've definitely tackled an issue like bell times, but we're still sort of continuing to explore bell times, see what's best for our students there. And also I want to continue to work with our state legislatures on budgets so that we're investing in our students from an early age and putting that through to their final years in high school, and working on capital improvements and operating budgets and making sure that students are engaged and that we're really finding a nice balance of what's right for our students in those areas.
Well, sure, we certainly have some budget issues. We had budget issues this year, I mean, and Annapolis plays a critical role in supporting us. We all advocated for full funding of Geographic Cost of Education Index, and our governor, unfortunately, did not fully fund that. We advocated in Annapolis for more construction funding, and all of that will go forward this year. I know that the force of MCR, working with the PTA, is also there. And so you talked about the communications through various, your SMOB Advisory Council and technology. Other suggestions? I mean, if students want to help us, how do you think we can better engage with them?
So I think when it comes to the budget and to our legislators and even our county council, we say time and time again that it's very powerful to hear stories instead of just numbers or data. And I would really urge students or anyone in general, parents, teachers, who want to help us get this budget through next year to write to their legislators and basically tell them what a fully approved, fully funded budget would mean to their classroom and to their education. And I think these individual stories talking about, your textbook falling apart, or talking about how your school building hasn't been renovated in 80 years, those kinds of stories are very powerful, and they're a lot more meaningful than numbers on a graph or just data in a chart.
So during your campaign for SMOB, you must have heard lots of stories from students and their concerns. Let's talk about that. And
yeah, so there were definitely a lot of concerns that students expressed, whether it was I would walk through the hallways and they would show me how their water fountain's not working or how certain parts of their school are falling apart. A lot of students also talked about class size, how they might not have a desk in one of their classrooms, or various concerns how their class sizes continue to grow and grow and grow. And a lot of the solutions which we have obviously are driven by budgetary matters, and so sort of touching with what Dahlia said, something that I definitely want to do this year is engage students through grassroots campaigning, showing that an investment in our budget is an investment in the next generation of our county, our state, and our country, really. And so some ways that students can sort of get involved include the middle school and high school countywide student governments, MCR and MCJC, or through their local student government, because I really try to be in contact with various leaders at every school, whether if I can't get to every single student, I really try to talk to your student government leaders or the countywide level. So those are great ways to start advocating for you or for your peers. And I think that then it can really easily streamline something to the Board of Education or to our state house and our state legislatures to show them that we really do need this money and we do need an investment in our future.
So Dahlia, what was a surprise to you coming in as a board member? People see what goes on before the cameras at public hearings, and were there any areas of being a member of the Board of Education that you didn't know?
So I think or not really a huge surprise, but what took me back a little bit and took some time to adjust to was coming in as a board member. You have these responsibilities, and you have you have this power that you can vote on a lot of these issues, but it was very clear to me, and very quickly did I realize that this is a board made up of 8 people, and this entire school system is 22,000 employees, and every single person kind of has to pull their own weight. And really, there's a lot of communication that goes around, whether it's discussing, you know, what could be the possible ramifications of voting on this decision, or talking to our county council members and looking at the budget in different ways. It's not really just up to you. You're very dependent on the other county agencies and the other people you work with into making sure that what's best for students moves forward.
So other areas, you know, sometimes students say to me, oh, I can't imagine a student wanting to serve in this capacity, hanging out with 7 adults on a really time-consuming basis. But you know, what about interacting with us, with the old folks?
I honestly would not have wanted to spend my senior year any other way. I think this whole experience has been a tremendous learning curve. I've learned so much about what it means to be a public official, but then I've also learned so much about what goes into our school system. And being in Montgomery County Public Schools since kindergarten and be able to see all the decisions that are made that impact students in the classroom, I've just learned so much. And you know, getting to be with you and the other board members, it's really been an exciting experience, and you just learn so much, whether it's just advice on how to be a great board member or advice on life, and it's really fantastic.
Well, and I think one area that no one anticipates becoming when they become a board member is the role as in a quasi-judicial capacity, decisions about transfers, appeals, about you know, admission to magnet programs. And I know, Eric, you have some interest in politics, policy, and legal matters. I mean, what are you anticipating? What has Dahlia shared with you about
we actually had a training the other week, and we have the board comes down. The school system makes a lot of decisions when parents write in or there's an appeal, and a few of these decisions are appealed and they come to the board, and it can be sort of nerve-wracking, sort of stressful, because these are individual students that are going to, and we're making a decision that's going to have a direct impact on their life or the life of their family. So it can be sort of overwhelming at first to get these decisions in and to make a decision, but making sure that we think things through carefully and that we don't try to rush any decision, and that we really think about what's best for the individual student, what's best for the family, and trust our executive staff that works very hard here, and that we're always in close collaboration, because even though we all 8 board members have different opinions, whether it's in the quasi-judicial role of the board or it's voting on a policy, we always want what's best for the students. We're very invested in our children, I think, in our young people. So I think that some of the pushing and pulling can be very good, because it really helps us get to the best decision possible.
So Dahlia, you earlier touched on the superintendent search, and the student board member has a very important vote on that. Really most important decision that the board makes. And you were here with us in the start of this process, and Eric will be with us as we successfully conclude it next spring. Any thoughts about the process or?
Well, I think my first thought was, I'm just speaking for myself, and I'm so thankful that Mr. Bowers chose to stick around for another year. And I think having that additional time and being able to do the search a little bit more with more time really allows the board to find the best person for our students and the best person for this county. And I'm so glad that Eric will be able to finish out the process. Because the superintendent is such an important figure in the school system, I think it's very important that we choose someone that is very invested in all of our communities. And because Montgomery County is so diverse, that's why we created a list of characteristics of what we would like to see in a superintendent. And we're hoping that next year we'll be able to, or you'll be able to, the board members will be able to find someone who fits the bill and does justice for our students.
And any thoughts on the superintendent search? Are you excited or wondering how much time will be involved?
I definitely think that looking for a superintendent is going to be sort of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Sort of in the broader sense, it's going to teach me what looking for a job in the future is going to be like, what it's like to sit at both ends of the table, whether you're being interviewed or you're interviewing somebody, and sort of characteristics that I see which I appreciate in a candidate, or whether it's something that a candidate could improve upon that I could take for advice when I'm interacting with adults later in my career. So I think that finding the right person, as Dahlia alluded to, and someone who's really going to be a relentless advocate for our students is going to be really important. But I also think that it's going to be a really great learning experience and something that I'm going to take a lot out of, and I hope to be able to share with the students of Montgomery County in these years to come.
So, you know, every year, I mean, we have incredible student members of the board. I mean, it's a very exclusive fraternity, sorority, but, you know, they've all, you know, come to us. You know, everyone is so intelligent, so diligent, hardworking. You know, we enjoy being with the student, and by the time we really totally know them, we have to say goodbye. But Eric, you're a junior, so hopefully you'll be with us for 2 years. And let's talk about the group, some of your predecessors. I know that a lot of you stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes when you need advice on how to best, it can be something as simple as, you know, how can I best answer this constituent's question? Or just in a broader sense, do I go more with what my colleagues are saying, or how do I bring up this issue at the table? So there's a lot of room to get advice from past board members. And I think just staying in touch with Justin, John, Alan, even up to Tim, you know, it's very useful, and it's definitely been a very helpful experience. And I think just being able to meet with some of the predecessors have been very helpful in some of the decision making, especially this year. I know this year with the superintendent search, Alan was the last one to do the superintendent search, so just some general advice was also very helpful, and his guidance was very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And I know that you're in touch with Justin and John.
I keep having bigger shoes to fill here. I mean, all of the past SMOBs have been such tireless advocates for the students, for working day and night, really putting their board work first. And I think that there's definitely huge shoes to fill. But I look forward to putting in a lot of work. And I always know that I'm fortunate that Dahlia is just a call away, or Justin and Tim. All the SMOBs have different agendas which come up during their term, and the board looks at things every so often. I know that you've been on the board for a long time, so you can sort of go back in your memory, but the SMOBs don't necessarily have the institutional memory, so we sort of have to pull out of our resources, go into the Rolodex, and call some of the former SMOBs, because issues do come back up, and see how it was handled back then, and things that they, in retrospect, say maybe we could have done this better, or maybe we should have done this, and then you can take that into consideration to really make the best decision to serve the students.
Well, sure. I mean, you know, many years ago, the student members of the board, Dustin Jeter and others, were lobbying in Annapolis. It was illegal to have a cell phone on school grounds, and we had to work to get the state law changed just to do that. And it's very hard to believe that now, you know, kids carry cell phones.
And we're encouraging it too.
Yes.
It's bring your own device.
Right. So, but SMOBs were very active, and it took a bit of effort to convince some of our administrators that it would be okay to have cell phones in the schools. And when they testified in Annapolis, there was some pushback that it was only a Montgomery County issue. But so they've been active not only here in Montgomery County in making changes, but also in Annapolis. So Dahlia, tell me, what are your plans after you finish this term? I know you're going to Harvard, and we're so thrilled for you. Talk about next steps. for you?
Next steps, I'm hoping to explore my options in college. I'm not sure exactly what I want to major in just yet, but I feel like that happens to a lot of young people, and college is really the opportunity to explore what you really want to do with your life. And I'm definitely keeping public service and being a public official in my back pocket because of this experience. It's definitely changed a lot of my mindset and my passions and what I want to do in life. And I think it's just, I'm just taking the summer to really appreciate the fact that it's Montgomery County Public Schools that have helped me become who I am today, and being part of the school system for 13 years and being able to say I've been here since I was 5 years old. I really owe it to all of my teachers and principals who helped me along the way.
Well, we wish you the best at Harvard and welcome aboard. Eric, we never know what each year is going to bring as a Board of Education member. I've often thought I should have kept a diary because no one would, would be able to believe all of the intrigue and adventures that I've had. So welcome and best wishes, Dahlia. That's all the time we have for this edition of Education Matters. I'm Pat O'Neill. Thanks for joining me. If you'd like more information about this program, please call the Board of Education office at 301-279-3617 or email boe@mcpsmd.org. Thanks for joining us, and remember, education matters.